Hello world, welcome to episode 34 of my weekly rant that is dedicated to inspiring the change of mindsets, especially our African mindsets. I want to discuss the importance of knowing and overcoming the barriers to change in your life. When I look back at my whole life, starting with my days in Uganda and then the years I spent in the US and now in England, I can judge the trajectory of change that has shaped my life. In Uganda, the main catalyst of change in my life was me leaving my hometown of Uganda at a very early age to study in a boarding school in a different part of the country where I could not speak the local language and my English was not yet developed. I remember the first year away at Nkumba boarding school was characterized by confusion, loneliness, sadness, and all the difficulties faced by a boy of 10 years being separated from his parents. The biggest difficulty was the language barrier. It wasn't until the second year, after I had learned to speak enough of the local language, Luganda, and my English was intelligible, that I found my bearing and started to fulfill my potential. So, for any consequential change in life, identify the barrier and tackle it first. For example, if you're at a new job and you're having performance issues due to a bad manager, don't just bury your head and keep working harder, thinking that the problem will go away. Instead, you should decide to sit down with that boss so you can resolve your issues before you can start performing. Years later, when I had moved to the US, the barrier to change was not issues to do with the language. However, it was this new thing called race. As a teenager right out of Africa, I struggled with identifying myself primarily as a black person because while at home, I'd never had to define myself by race. It was a major source of anxiety, cultural confusion, and I remember my high school counselor in New Mexico once counseled me by asking, "Sonny, do you feel like you are in a crowd but all alone?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." The way I managed to overcome this race identity barrier in order to own my change in America was through an epiphany I had after reading the book The Africans by Ali Mazrui. That book made me understand that as an African, my fundamental identity is the interplay of the triple heritages of tribe, religion, and colonial heritages, nothing to do with race or color. While I appreciate that the former slaves in America lost their African culture and have become a distinct and beautiful part of American society defined primarily by their race or color, that wasn't my identity narrative. By searching the depth of my soul as a triple heritage African, I found my identity bearing. And this unleashed my human potential and creative energies, which resulted in me formulating the idea of the fourth heritage as the identity that can enable me as an African to go beyond the limiting aspects of my tribal, religious, and colonial identities to be a modern person identified by my character. The lesson here is that for us Africans, we are bound to have identity crises if we identify ourselves fundamentally by our race or color instead of the really deep roots we have in our cultures that are integrated along tribal, religious, and colonial heritages. Thank you for watching. Please leave me any comments about how you have overcome barriers to change in your life, and don't forget to support the channel by subscribing. Join me in this struggle to inspire the change of mindsets.